is 9 News with Peter Overton.
Tonight, a monster storm leaves thousands of homes underwater and the levels are rising. The force of nature rescues evacuations and lives lost. Extraordinary scenes, a car emerges from the froth. And tonight, Sydney is lashed, flash flooding, road chaos and fears of major damage. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a special 9 News bulletin on the flood crisis that's unfolding across 2 states. The massive storm front is lashing towns from Bundaberg right down the coast to Sydney. Bundaberg is facing a critical situation, their worst flood in 100 years. Evacuations, helicopter rescues and fears homes could be swept away. We begin our coverage with Damien Ryan.
The great mass of water is barrelling towards Brisbane, picking off a roll call of towns and farming communities on the way. This evening, Ipswich watched as the Bremer River rose and raced past at a frightening rate of knots. Houses marooned in a sea of brown water. Some were lucky, Ipswich escaping a repeat of 2011 when the city was smashed. The river reached 19 metres then, 15 metres tonight.
Still here.
That was 2 years ago.
Yes, 2 years ago.
But others saw the hard work of making a home come all undone.
It took us 6 months to rebuild it.
And you've got that little house for your daughter?
Yeah. Yep. We'll have to do it again.
You have to do it again?
Yep.
You'll be back?
Yep, for sure.
It won't be until the morning before anyone can really assess the damage. Meanwhile, Bundaberg was today right in the crosshairs of the Great Deluge. The sky above the city buzzed with choppers, winching stranded people off their rooftops. Mission after mission by the tireless helicopter crews. Others are carried to safety in tinnies. They've been warned what was coming, get out while you can, but chose to stay, trying to protect their homes. The strain of the weekend tornadoes, now the floods, written on their faces. Hundreds of homes and shops in and around Bundaberg were today swallowed by the surging waters. It's the city's worst flood on record.
The velocity of the water and the rise in water levels means that literally houses, particularly in North Bundaberg and maybe other locations, could be actually swept away.
The giant storm has taken a tragic toll. A young motorcyclist swept from his bike, his body later recovered.
There's a large swollen creek down at the bottom of the road and unfortunately someone has attempted to cross that.
As well, an 81-year-old man drowned near Bundaberg and a 27-year-old man washed away by a raging creek near Gympie. This disaster is an ill-fated alignment of nature's power. The biggest tides of the summer holding back the outflow from the coastal rivers. At Alexandra Head on the Sunshine Coast, this coffee-coloured froth. Watch the bus, but wait for the car.
Oh, there's a car!
One of the weird sights when the weather goes wild. Brisbane, meanwhile, has been battered by big winds, roofs blown away and trees down. Close to the city centre, a woman and a 3-year-old son were injured when their car was flattened by a fallen tree. The Brisbane River is rising rapidly, relentlessly seeping into the CBD, with warnings it's going to get much worse.
Once again, sadly, Queensland is facing a major crisis. To those right now who are in the grip of this disaster, I say to you, you're not alone.
Waterfront cafes and bars are again under siege. Celebrity chef Matt Moran's restaurant, one of the early casualties. The water's also biting into surrounding suburbs. In the north, in Windsor, we stumbled on 75-year-old Nola McAlpine, emotionally drained.
This is the 4th one in 4 years.
She shows us her home.
That fridge should be standing up. Been washed away. Careful.
Nola is still wading through insurance claims for the 2011 flood. Louise Toohey from the riverside suburb of Sherwood knows too well how bad it can get.
That's my little yellow house there.
The bottom floor of her home was completely underwater 2 years ago. She and her family now holding their breath that it won't happen again.
I feel sick to the core. Anxiety, I don't know. I can't believe it's happening again.
The township of Laidley is completely cut off. It's in the Lockyer Valley where 19 people died in 2011. Back then, the torrent tore down Murphy's Creek, devastating the towns of Grantham, Gatton and Helidon. This time, it's in reverse. The rivers and creeks below pushing up into the valley. 709 millimetres of rain falling around Laidley Creek in just 24 hours. There's one saving grace. Last time round, a big water release from a dangerously full Wivenhoe Dam doomed much of Brisbane. But engineers, caught out once, launched a preemptive release last Friday, making room in the dam for the worst surge from the downpours. The only good news in a saturated southeastern Queensland.
All right, our reporter Damien Ryan joins us now from Ipswich. Damien, good evening to you. The Bremer River at Ipswich certainly causing some angst tonight for the residents there.
Yeah, no doubt, Pete, and the weather hasn't helped because the rain has set in this evening, and you sense that the river has been edging up ever so closely. You can certainly hear it. It is raging behind me, but as I mentioned earlier, it's not to the levels of 2011, thankfully, because back then the water was over my head, but there is still plenty of heartache. We saw those poor people there today or this evening looking in their homes knowing that they're flooded and what they're faced with tomorrow. And of course, there'll be probably 500 or 600 more of those cases tomorrow when people are allowed back in, the water drops, they're allowed back in to go and look at their properties. But quite a few losses here, but not nearly as bad as 2011. Ipswich is probably done with in terms of this storm front. Next stop, we'd have to think, would be Brisbane, Pete.
All right, Damien, we've got some heartbreaking news now that's just come in. A 3-year-old boy has died in the Royal Brisbane Hospital tonight after he was hit by a falling tree. His mother was also injured in the accident. That was at Kedron Brook. She remains in a critical condition. More than 230,000 homes in southeast Queensland are without electricity tonight, and it could be another 2 days before power is restored. A severe weather warning remains in place for the Gold Coast, which has been pummeled by gale force winds and heavy rain.
Terrified residents shelter inside as cyclonic wind gusts top 125 kilometres an hour.
I'm not leaving! I'm not leaving either!
The large dome skylight torn from a building in Surfers Paradise crashes onto a neighbouring pool deck, shattering into pieces below. The stage was set before the